Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Insights from the Broward County Property Appraiser. We're so happy to have you here today. So thankful that Marty, Kiar, and Mila Schwartzreich are joining us. I want to thank our sponsors at the Florida Bar Tax section and our co-host, the Florida Government Lawyers section. This is the first CLE I've ever been aware of where there are 4 different credits it qualifies for. There's the city, county, local credit. There's the state and federal credit, the tax section, and administrative law. So thanks to Carly and Whitney for getting those credits for us. And I guess we'll jump into it. I'd like to introduce our speakers. Let me switch the slide here. Oops. So of course we have Marty Kiar, our Broward County Property Appraiser. He's a lifelong Broward County resident. Having been born and educated in Broward County, his roots run deep in this community. Marty earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from Palm Beach Atlantic University and went on to graduate magna cum laude from Nova Southeastern University with his Juris Doctorate. His path to public service began when he was appointed to the Town of Davie School Advisory Board, Town of Davie Airport Advisory Board, and the Broward County Housing and Finance Authority. Marty went on to serve as the assistant town attorney and assistant municipal prosecutor for the town of Davie. In 2006, Marty was elected to the Florida House of Representatives, being reelected in 2008 and 2010. Continuing his public service, Marty was elected to the Broward County Commission in 2012, representing District 1. During his tenure on the Broward County Commission, he was honored to be selected by his peers to serve as both vice mayor and mayor of Broward County. Marty took office as the Broward County Property Appraiser on June 3rd, 2017. Marty lives in Plantation with his wife, Kelly, a primary school teacher. Together, they have 2 daughters, Brianne and Cameron. Rounding out the Kiar family are 3 cats, Rocky, Maggie, and Toby. Thank you for joining us, Marty.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. We also have Mila Schwartzreich. She is the General Counsel and Director of Administration of the Offices of Marty Kiar, Broward County Property Appraiser, the 3rd largest property appraiser's office in the state of Florida. As General Counsel, Mila is responsible for all legal matters related to exemptions, property value issues, value adjustment board matters, and fraud investigations. Mila is the head of the Human Resources Department for the agency and oversees employment and compliance matters. Prior to joining BCPA, Mila was legal counsel within the Broward County Sheriff's Office. Mila worked closely with a multi-agency money laundering task force, which forfeited millions of dollars of illegally obtained assets, conducted law enforcement and child protective services training, and provided oversight to risk management. Mila began her tenure in public service as an assistant public defender in Broward County, where she represented juveniles accused of crimes and adult felony defendants. Mila is married to Eric Schwartzreich, a criminal defense attorney, and they have 2 children. Skylar is currently attending Nova Southeastern University College of Law, and Sydney is a sophomore at Florida Gulf Coast University. Thank you for joining us, Mila.
And by the way, their dogs are named Alibi and Jury.
Oh, felony, jury dog.
Felony, sorry, felony.
Sorry. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. I'm Jeanette Moffa. I'm a state and local tax attorney here, and I'll be moderating as we go through these slides. There's a ton of information, and we'll kick it off with Marty.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeanette. I really appreciate it, and I hope everybody is doing great out there. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to say a few words today. I was really looking forward to this. And, at any time I get to, basically to participate with lawyers and others and help provide CLE credits and just about information that we can work together with to make Broward County better, it's really just an honor. And so thank you very much. But before I quickly talk about how our office can work with you all to help our Broward County public, I want to thank you. Jeanette was so nice, and she mentioned that I've had the privilege of serving in a few capacities. I got to serve in the Florida House of Representatives. I got to be on the county commission. I got to be the mayor of Broward County. And since 2016, I've been our elected property appraiser. And I can tell you, of all the jobs I've ever had, this one I love the most by far, because you get to interact with everybody in the county, and the nature of the job is to let you help people. And here's a big difference. When you serve in the Florida legislature, it's wonderful. I mean, you get to debate education and healthcare. You get to try to make the state better. But sometimes you feel so far away from the people, you don't always get to meet the people you're helping. When you serve on the county commission, it's a great job. I mean, Broward County has more people than 13 states, the District of Columbia, and all U.S. territories except Puerto Rico. That's how big it is. And when you serve on the county commission, you get to make the port better and the airport better and mass transit better. You get to try to make Broward County very strong economically statewide. But sometimes you feel very far away from the people. You always get to meet the people you're helping. Property appraiser, I think, is the greatest elected job alive because your job is basically constituent services. It's the type of job where you help seniors and veterans. When you go home, you put your head in your pillow, you feel like you did something good that day. And so I just want to thank you so much for allowing me to do it. You all were nice enough to reelect me once again in 2024. So you're kind of stuck with me for another 4 years. But I just feel so privileged and blessed to be able to have this job. And there are really a few main functions to our office. The first function is we determine the value of every piece of property in Broward County for tax purposes, whether it's residential, commercial, tangible personal property, or essentially assessed property, which are railroads. And the reason that's important is when you pay your property taxes, the amount of taxes you pay is a relationship between the value of the property that we set and the tax rate set by your local governments. So the higher the value of the property, the more taxes you pay. The lower the value of the property, the lower amount of taxes you pay. So the most important thing we want to do is get it right. As I said before, Broward County is a huge place, and we appraise more parcels than exist in many states. And even though the people in our office do a very good job and their assessments are very accurate, mistakes can occur, or maybe people have information about their property that we don't have that can help us bring down their assessed value, which would bring down their property taxes. And let me just give you an example. In August of this year, every single Broward County property owner is going to get a document from me in the mail. It's the truth and millage notice. It's not a tax bill. It's basically a document so you can make sure you don't overly pay in your property taxes. And that document is going to show a lot of things. It'll show the value of your property for tax purposes. It'll show all the tax saving exemptions you're currently getting. It'll show the dates and times your local governments are going to discuss their tax rates. And it'll show the proposed amount of property taxes you're going to be asked to pay for this year. And when you get that document, really take a look at it. And if you have any concern with the value of your property, give me a call by September 18th so we can make sure you only pay tax on your fair share of value. And so what's going to happen is when we send that document out, people are going to call me and they're going to say, Marty, I understand how you valued my property the way that you did. You looked at January 1st of the year because that's the date we determine the value of all property. So when your November tax bill comes out, it's what was your value of your property on January 1st. And in order to determine the value of my residential property, you looked at all the homes just like mine that sold the year before, and you used those to find a value for my property. But my property is a lot different. It's dilapidated. It has mortgage. It has water damage. There's something about my property that's much different than these other properties. And so, Marty, you messed up. And I'll always tell them, well, send me the information you have. And people will send us pictures to let us do site visits. They'll send us insurance information. And if it's information we can use to bring down their assessed value, which should bring down their property tax, we're always going to do it. So when that document comes out, please take a look out for it. Really look it over very specifically. And if you have any concerns with the value of your property, give me a call. We'll go through it together. And if I could bring down that value, I always will. The second thing we do, and this is what I love most about my job, is we give tax saving exemptions to people that qualify. And there are a lot of exemptions under Florida law that people qualify for. The most important one by far is the homestead exemption. If you live here in Broward County and it's your primary residence, if it's your primary residence where you're registered to vote, if you don't vote, where your declaration of domicile, where your car is registered to, if this is where you live and you raise your family and it's your primary residence, you get that very important exemption called the homestead exemption. And that does two very important things. The first thing it does, it takes $50,000 of value off the tax bill you don't want to pay taxes on. Can save you maybe $1,000 a year, depending on your local millage rates. But most importantly, it really protects you going forward because every single year after you have a homestead exemption, the value you're taxed on cannot go up more than a maximum of 3% or the consumer price index, whichever is lower. And that is so important right now because everybody out there knows what's happened to your property since before COVID. It is skyrocketing in value. It's skyrocketing in value because people are coming from all over the world and paying top dollar for properties in Broward County. So I always tell everybody, if you haven't filed for homestead exemption, or you know somebody that hasn't filed for homestead exemption, and you lived on your property of January 1st of this year coming up, please file for homestead. You have till September 18th to do it. And what that'll make sure is that the value you're taxed on won't go up more than 3%, and your market value won't skyrocket and make your assessed value skyrocket. It's a really important exemption. Once you get that, there are so many other exemptions people qualify for. Now, the homestead exemption is like the gateway exemption. You can't have any other exemption unless you get that first. But once you get that, you may qualify for many other things that could save you or your family money. My favorite one by far that I love to talk about is called the low-income senior exemption. You know, Broward County, again, has about 2 million people, and about a third of our population are seniors. And unfortunately, on average, the most impoverished portion of our population are also seniors. And I always believe if you can help a senior who's struggling to make ends meet, put a little bit more money in their pocket, they can have a little better of a life. So if you know anybody that's over 65 years of age or over, they made under last year right about $38,000. If they don't file income taxes, Social Security doesn't count. If they do, they look at their adjusted gross income tax line of their income tax statement. If it's under that number, they basically get another homestead exemption on top of the one they currently get. It can save them another 4, 5, maybe $600 a year, depending on the millage rates. There are also some cities that have what's called the long-term senior exemption, and Broward County government has it as well. And that's a great exemption that can save long-term low-income seniors a whole lot of money, but it's hard to qualify for. And here's how it works. If you meet the qualifications I just mentioned, you're over 65 years of age, you made under about $38,000, but if you lived in your home for 25 years or more, and the value of your home at the time of the application was under $250,000, you're fully exempt from paying the city portion of the tax bill and the county portion of the tax bill. Now, there's not many single-family homes in Broward County that actually qualify, but a lot of condos do. So if you have a parent, for example, lives in Century Village or Kings Point, they've been there for a long time, they might qualify for this very important exemption that knocks out a significant portion of their tax bill and would save them a lot of money. There are many other exemptions as well. Some are very large and some are very small, and you can stack the exemptions to reduce your tax bill. Examples of very large ones would be for 100% disabled first responders or 100% disabled veterans. If somebody is a 100% disabled veteran or a 100% disabled first responder and their disability is service connected, they're fully exempt from all property taxes. If they're not 100% disabled, but they're a veteran and they're combat disabled, then they get a percentage reduction in their taxes that correlates to whatever their disability percentage is. If they're not 100% disabled, not combat disabled, but still a disabled veteran, they still get a good reduction in their taxes. If you are a widow, you're entitled to an exemption. If you're visually impaired, you're entitled to an exemption. There are lots of other exemptions for people with disabilities. So I always tell everybody, go on our website at bcpa.net, click on exemptions. And if there's something you're not getting, call me by September 17th of this year so we can make sure that every exemption you're entitled to is reflected in your tax bill. The next thing I wanted to quickly talk about is something that's very, very important as well, and it's called portability. Portability gives you the opportunity to move from one home into another home and not be taxed out of that home. And here's the way it works. When you bought your home, you filed for homestead. And when you did that, the Save Our Homes Assessment Clause of the Florida Constitution kicked into effect. That said that every year thereafter, the value of your tax line could not go more than a maximum of 3% or the Consumer Price Index, whichever is lower. So over time, your market value gets very, very high based on sales, but your assessed value stays lower because of that cap. So you get all of this value between your market value and your assessed value you don't pay taxes on. If you now decide you want to buy another home of equal or greater value anywhere else in the state of Florida, you can take whatever difference that is with you between your market and your assessed value to your new property, make that your new homestead, and you can save a lot of money in your taxes. If you buy a home of lower value, take a percentage of it, and you can still save a significant amount of money in property taxes. On our website at bcpa.net, we have a tax estimator and a portability estimator. And if you just type in some numbers and you're thinking about moving, it'll show you what your tax will be with portability and without portability. And just to really illustrate how important portability is, let me give you a real world example where somebody was able to move in Broward County from Weston to Fort Lauderdale, but they wouldn't have moved if there wasn't portability. There was a couple that lived in the city of Weston, and they bought a home in Weston Hills decades ago when Weston Hills was built. And decades ago, a young family could still afford a home in Weston Hills. They bought it for a couple $100,000 at the time, and they filed for homestead. And once they did that, that Save Our Homes Assessment Clause kicked into place. It said that every year thereafter, the value of their tax could not go more than 3% or the Consumer Price Index, whichever is lower. So many, many years go by. Their kids went to Cypress Bay High School and the University of Florida, and all of a sudden they were empty nesters in this beautiful home in Weston Hills, and they were about to retire, and all they really wanted to do was move to downtown Fort Lauderdale, but they were very afraid they couldn't afford the condo and the property taxes in downtown Fort Lauderdale. So we looked at their property. This was a couple of years ago. And the market value of their property at the time was about $1 million. But their assessed value was about $500,000. So they had $500,000 of value they weren't paying taxes on. What they did was they sold their Weston home. They then bought a new condo in downtown Fort Lauderdale for right about $1 million. And we were able to take the full $500,000 of value they weren't paying tax on in Weston, applied to their condo in downtown Fort Lauderdale, which dropped their assessed value about $500,000, which basically meant their taxes in Fort Lauderdale were very similar to what they were in Weston. And something that's very important for people to kind of remember is the first year, they probably saved about $10,000, but they also say that every single year thereafter, because that value basically stays with the property. So portability really helps you. So if this happened, let's say 3 years ago, they've saved about $30,000 as a result of just moving that over. It is a fantastic program. The other thing I wanted to quickly talk about before I turn it over to Mila or answer anybody's questions, if anything pops up, is about title fraud. And I love speaking to attorneys about title fraud because honestly, attorneys sometimes, especially in the real estate world, are our windows to the world and really help us catch a lot of bad people trying to do a lot of bad things. But let me just tell you the issue. Unfortunately, South Florida and Broward County in particular is the title fraud capital of the world. It's the capital of the world because you have criminals and that's what they are. And what they do is they walk into the recording division every single day in every county in the state of Florida, and they file fake deeds on people's properties, and they take those deeds and they extort people for money or mortgage rent or sell the property. They do it all the time. And the reason it's so easy for them is the recording division for every county has a ministerial duty. They have to accept whatever documents filed with them. So you have these criminals, they walk in, they file a fake deed, and they do something nefarious with it. So the first thing we wanted to do was give the people of Broward County the opportunity to fight the fraud before the fraud occurs. So in 2021, we came up with a really good idea called Owner Alert. It's a free service to the public to let them know if there's been a title change to their property. And so far, we've had about 300,000 Broward County property owners sign up so far. My goal is to get everybody to sign up because it's there to protect the most important asset. And here's how you sign up. If you go to our website at bcpa.net, you click on Owner Alert, you type in your name, you type in your parcel ID number, which you easily grab from our website, and you type in your email address. And if we have your email address on file, you're automatically verified. If we don't, you have to upload your Florida driver's license or Florida ID. If you don't have that, you have to upload a utility bill or something proving ownership. And that if any document, legitimate or not, is filed changing ownership, you'll be notified instantaneously by email, by text message. You can get a hard copy in the mail so you can make sure somebody can't steal your property and really cloud your title and cost you a lot of money in attorney fees to try to fix it. And the one thing I wanted to mention before I talk about what we do when people actually do it is another great thing about our Owner Alert program is 2 years ago, we went to the legislature and we basically said to the legislature and the governor's office that, hey, we have this fantastic program, an Owner Alert program. But the issue is all the information we have, truthfully, the fact that people signed up, their emails, text messages, all of that can be publicly disclosed through a public records request. And fortunately, the legislature did the right thing. They passed a fantastic law. All Democrats, all Republicans voted for it, and the governor enthusiastically signed it that exempted all information that we collect for our Owner Alert program, your email, your phone number, even the fact that you signed up is exempt from public disclosure. So it can only be used for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to notify you of a title change to the property. And when I set this program up in 2021, I started getting phone calls and emails from residents, and they would say, Marty, I just got an alert from your office that somebody changed the title on my property, but I didn't do it. And then I got more and more and more. And I realized how big of a deal this was. So I came up with a different idea. I wanted to work with law enforcement, build criminal cases, and put the people in jail who are doing this. So I called the Florida Department of Revenue, which oversees all the property appraisers of the state of Florida. And I go, Department of Revenue, I would like to really work with law enforcement, build criminal cases because a lot of people are being taken advantage of. And the Department of Revenue kind of thought about it, and they're like, well, you know what? You're a property appraiser's office. You're not law enforcement, but we understand this is a big deal for South Florida. A lot of people are being taken advantage of. So we'll approve your program, Marty, and we'll make you the guinea pig for the rest of the state. I go, great. I then went to the county commission, which funds my budget. And I go to all 9 county commissioners. Listen, I'm really excited that the Department of Revenue approved a new program in my office. I'm going to call my crimes against property team. Would you fund it? And all 9 county commissioners said, absolutely, Marty. We'll give you whatever you need to make this successful. I then went to see Sheriff Tony, who's my friend. And I go, Sheriff Tony, I'm super excited. The county commission is funding a new program in my office, my crimes against property team, but I have a huge issue. I'm not law enforcement. You are. I can't issue probable cause affidavit, search warrants. I can't arrest people. You can. Can we work together? And can we put these people in jail? And he goes, absolutely, Marty. And we entered into an interlocal agreement to work together. And he's assigned now 3 sheriff's detectives to work with our office at our house within our office so we can actually do the job of law enforcement. I then went to see Harold Pryor, our state attorney. And I go, Harold, I'm super excited. The sheriff and I, we're working together. And we're going to build these criminal cases. And if we bring you cases you think are prosecutorial, would you prosecute the people that are doing this? And he goes, absolutely, Marty. And we entered into an agreement to work together. And he assigned an assistant state attorney to work with our office to prosecute the people that we bring to him. And over the past, actually 3 years now that we've been in existence, we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of criminal investigations. We've had numerous arrests, numerous convictions. And we've been able to work with the court system to get property back to people in a much more expeditious and cost-efficient manner. And just to give you an idea how bad the people are that do this, let me give you some examples that just show what people will do to try to defraud other people. And the first case I like to talk about involved a married couple. It was 2 wives. One of the wives worked for one of our hospital districts. The other wife worked in the real estate industry. The wife that worked in the hospital district would find out when people would pass on. She would then take their confidential information, including their social security numbers, and give it to her wife in the real estate industry, who would find if they had property in Broward County and heirs here. If they had property and no heirs, they would file fake deeds on people's properties. They'd sell the properties on Zillow, mortgage the properties, rent the properties. They profited the amount of likely millions of dollars. But something I'm very happy about is they were found guilty. And even though they were a married couple, they were spending their time at different prisons, which I think is a very good thing. Another example that I like to talk about was one of our largest cases. It involved a number of people that are defendants. And they came up with a very, very, very smart scheme. They decided they want to use the Broward County court system to steal people's properties. So here's what they would do. The ringleaders would file what's called quiet title actions in circuit court, basically lawsuits in circuit court, saying this senior or this bank or this person no longer wanted the property. The return of service would go to the guy's buddy who was in a mobile home in Hillsborough County, and he would say, oh, yeah, I represent that senior, that bank, that person. Yeah, they don't want the property anymore. Put in this guy's name or his company's name. These guys are so smart. They even went on the Sunbiz Florida and changed the registered agent for all these different banks to this guy who was in a mobile home in Hillsborough County. And then what would happen is they would get these properties. They would then, the judges would issue the orders. They would get the properties. They'd sell them on Zillow. They mortgaged them. They rented them. They profited the amount of a lot of money. Fortunately, a number of them have been found guilty. The ringleader was sentenced to 8 years in state prison, followed by 10 years probation. Another very interesting conviction was a minor co-conspirator who received only 10 years probation, but she was also ordered deported to her home country of Moldova, which is an Eastern European, very cold country that she can never return to the United States from. Another example I wanted to bring up was, people ask me three things. They always say, Marty, who are the people that do this? What kind of technology do they use? And who are the victims? And so I have three fast stories I just wanted to talk to you about that illustrate all three. The first one is, who are the people that do this? Well, what we found is that it's pretty much everybody. It's all different professions, all different races, all different religions, all different types of people. But every single person we've arrested, the one thing I found is that they have in common is they are just very, very, very smart people looking for an easy way to actually make a buck off innocent people. And to give you an idea, over the summer, we actually arrested a lawyer who was allegedly helping people steal properties in Cooper City. So there's a lot of people that do this. The second thing that people ask me is, what kind of technology do they use? Well, generally, it's very primitive. They walk into the recording division, they file a fake deed, and they do something bad with it. But the technology is getting a lot better. And there's one case that I think really shows how smart some of the people are that are doing this. There was a title company that actually was contacted by a person who allegedly owned a vacant parcel in Hollandale Beach. And the person basically said to them, oh, you know what? I'm retiring. I want to move, I think, to Michigan and be with my grandkids. I've had this vacant parcel in Hollandale Beach for a long time. I'd like to sell it because it will really help me in my retirement years. And the title company was very smart. And the first thing said, well, you have to show us you own the property. And they sent over documents to them that looked like they may be legitimate, but they also said, you know what, we also have to see you in person. And the person said, well, I can't see you in person, but I can be over Zoom. And they, okay, we'll be over Zoom. And so the Zoom meeting opened up. And you see this sweet, innocent senior sitting at the dining room table, drinking either coffee or tea. I'm not sure which one. And she's talking about how she's looking forward to selling this property to really enjoy her golden years. Well, it just so happened that there was a little teeny glitch that would occur every single 20 or 30 seconds or so that made the title company suspicious. Well, it turned out that sweet, innocent lady trying to sell the vacant parcel in Hollandale Beach was actually artificial intelligence. So the technology is getting much, much, much more sophisticated. So I always tell everybody, be very, very careful with regard to some of these sales. The other thing people ask is, who are the people that are the victims? Well, we found in all of our cases is that there are victims under everybody can be a victim. We've had wealthy people as victims. We've had all kinds of different people in Broward County as victims. But for the most part, the people that are victims the most are disabled people, seniors, very, very vulnerable people, low-income people. And the reason being is because the people that do this, again, are very smart. And they try to pick on and prey upon whoever they think they can best get away with it. So I have one case I just kind of want to talk about that really illustrates, it's kind of why we do this. And it's kind of like my guiding light, why I think this is so important, because the victim was about as vulnerable as they come. Now, it's important to note in this particular case, there has not yet been a conviction, but I believe that there will be because I think the evidence is basically overwhelming. Here's what occurred. In Miramar, you had a gentleman, and the gentleman was a 65-year-old senior. But here's the deal. Not only was he a senior, he was very, very mentally and physically disabled to where he had the mentality, I believe, of a 6-year-old his entire life. He lived in Miramar. And while he lived in Miramar, his parents were his caregivers. They took care of him. And one day his parents passed on. And when they passed on, they left their property to their daughter, who then became his caregiver. And so she was his caregiver. She passed on. When she passed on, a neighbor 2 doors down allegedly did some very, very bad things. First of all, she was a Miami-Dade law enforcement officer, which makes me the most mad because the person that is the defendant in this matter that's supposed to protect a vulnerable person was the one allegedly hurting him. And here's what she did. She opened up a fake power of attorney in his name, basically saying she could make all the financial decisions for him. And she utilized that power of attorney to open up a bank account in both their names. And a whole lot of his money, I believe Social Security and other money, was actually deposited into that. She got away with that. She then opened up a probate estate in the Broward County Circuit Courts to get everything that the sister had owned into his name, including the house. It went through the court system. It was actually signed, and remember, she has the power of attorney, so she was the one that initiated the probate estate proceeding. The judge signed the order, and then now everything is in his name. And the first thing she did as the person that had the power of attorney was sign his home over to her. She then took that home and she started renting it. I think she started trying to take out mortgages. She wanted to sell it. And she actually moved him into a senior assisted living facility that I believe was being paid for by his Social Security disability. At the same time, she's still collecting all this other money in their joint bank account as other Social Security money and others, and having a really, really good time. She got away with that. So she took it even a step farther, where she decided to open up a life insurance policy in his name, making herself the beneficiary. He then passed on, and she collected all that money. Fortunately, while all this was going on, the Miami-Dade Police Department had an internal affairs investigation into her, and they couldn't figure out how she had all of these assets all of a sudden, how she owned a home right next door to her home, how she all of a sudden had all this wealth that she didn't have just before. And so they actually sent the case over to Harold Pryor, our state attorney, who then provided to our office. We did a very thorough investigation. She was arrested. She is definitely going to stand trial. And I believe if convicted, she'll go to jail for a very, very long time. But I like to talk about that story because the victim is about as vulnerable as you come, a senior with a severe disability. And that is the type of person that some of these criminals really like to prey upon. The last one I want to bring up is people ask me, Marty, how long are the prison sentences that are happening? Well, the prison sentences are getting bigger. A good example is there was a jury trial recently in one of our cases before Judge Odom, a fantastic judge on the Broward County Circuit Courts. And the person that was on trial was accused at the time of stealing a senior's home in Tamarack. Fortunately, the jury found him guilty on all charges, and he was actually sentenced to, I believe, 15 years in state prison with a 10-year minimum mandatory. So the sentences are actually getting pretty big, and I'm very glad about that because these people are preying on our vulnerable people and also on our most important asset, our home. So I really hope if you haven't signed up for our Owner Alert program, please do so. It's there to protect your most important asset, your home. And also, if you can let your clients know about it as well, that would be great. And with that said, I'm going to pass this on to Mila. But the last thing I wanted to bring up was, you know what, I feel just so blessed to be your Broward County Property Appraiser. And as I said at the beginning, the most important thing that we get to do is provide constituent services. And we love to work with lawyers and real estate agents, just anybody in the real estate industry. So if there's any issue, any question, it doesn't matter what it is, how big, how small, whatever the issue is, please use us as a resource. You can email or call me. You can talk to Mila, my legal counsel. Whatever we can do to help you and assist you as you represent your clients, it's our pleasure to be able to help. With that said, thank you so much, Jeanette, for having me on. I hope I didn't speak for too long. I am just very blessed to be able to be here.
Not at all. Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to Mila.
So to piggyback on what Marty just said regarding Owner Alert and regarding real estate transactions, I know we do have a lot of real estate lawyers watching really throughout the state. It is critical that we lawyers are vigilant. We have to ask questions. We have to review documents in a far more detail-oriented way. Do not simply rely on video. Today, we are all so spread out, which has many benefits, but it also has some detriments. And many of these cases occurred as a result of us not seeing each other one-on-one. Today's seminar wouldn't be possible if we didn't have the benefit of Zoom, which again is fabulous. However, many of these cases would not actually have occurred, these criminal cases, but for the ability not to see one another and rely on documents that are shared with you via Zoom, via email. One of the cases that Marty talked about specifically related to documents that really just passed. Title companies were on the hook for a lot of money that they tried to claw back. A lot of it was no longer available. And that's because even though there was title insurance, the title company, the attorneys did not do really their due diligence and ask questions. And sometimes expediency is great in one sense, but really very detrimental in another sense. So ask questions. One of the other cases Marty talked about, when the criminal defendants use the court system, the only reason that ever occurred was because everything was done electronically. Everything was done via submitting written pleadings. Once our departments unraveled these cases, our chief judge at the time, Judge Tudor, was so incensed and angry about how these defendants were able to just work the Broward County court system. We worked with him to enter an administrative order, which required certain things be done in person, which required that certain kinds of cases with fraud, these types of transactions get expedited and go through the process either with him as chief judge or another judge that was readily available. The fact that as Marty mentioned, the fact that a person was able to present themselves as the agent for a bank or for a senior that owned property in Broward County, yet be served in a trailer in Hillsborough County. Had that person been required to come to court in Broward County to appear in front of a judge and not just get defaults and other pleadings rubber stamped, it would have prevented it. So while there are a lot of people who are taken advantage of in cases where we are involved, where we lawyers are involved, it really is incumbent upon us to be extra diligent, ask extra questions. Another case Marty didn't have an opportunity to mention was a transfer of real property, several acres in Southwest Ranches, where there was title insurance. A closing took place in a separate county. And Marty, was it a McDonald's or was it a Burger King?
Sorry, Mila, it was actually at a Burger King.
At a Burger King.
Yes.
The closing took place at a Burger King. And the smartest person in that Burger King was actually the notary. Because the notary is like, how can this transaction be taking place in a Burger King in a separate county? And what she did was she took a thumbprint of the person who was attempting to buy the property. And that unraveled a whole other case. So ask questions, be diligent. If you are, if it appears as though you're asking too many questions, that's not a bad thing. If a buyer does not want to answer those questions, then there's something wrong. Absolutely something wrong with that transaction. They very well may not be who they pretend to be. And if a seller is too frustrated or annoyed to answer questions, here in the case we're talking about, the person purporting to be the owner did not own the property. If they're too frustrated or annoyed to answer these questions, something is not right. Be diligent and ask the extra questions. Another thing we wanted to discuss was common deed issues. Now, I see that we do have people from around the state participating in this CLE. I don't know if these issues are prevalent in your county, but I can tell you in our county, even if it sounds so simple and so easy, one of the most common issues we see with recorded deeds that are ultimately sent to our office to update the tax roll have issues with notarization. People say, well, how is it so difficult to notarize a document? You would be shocked to know how many deeds we will not update the tax roll with when the notarization is not as required by the statute. And the biggest problem, and many times my biggest argument with lawyers, where I have to cut and paste the statute that's up before you and highlight the relevant portions, is you have to make sure the notary, and I know for you real estate lawyers, the notaries are usually folks that work for you, right? Either your paralegals or other staff members right there on site. And you figure, I'm the lawyer, I don't have to make sure it was notarized properly. They should know that. It's your name on the preparation of that deed. And if there's an issue with updating a tax roll, that client is going to call you, not your assistant, not whatever notary you recommended in order to address the legal issue. But the specificity that has to be adhered to is, as we have on the slide, known, personally known, or presented evidence of their identity. We cannot leave it blank, right? It's not personally known or presented identification. You have to pick one. And if you don't, the Broward County Property Appraiser's office, while we cannot tell you who owned real property, we're like, we don't have the legal authority to adjudicate it, but we will not update the tax roll if a deed is missing those important components. People say, well, you're not the deed police. We're not, but we can absolutely determine what we update the tax roll with and what we do not. And this is not legally compliant. Why is it such an issue? A, it's candidly not legally compliant. As an attorney, you want to make sure the documents you help prepare and the documents that come out of your office are legally compliant, because that's what people are hiring you to do. Secondly, there are so many cases, criminal cases, we have uncovered because of our department's specificity and diligence and attention to detail, where they rushed through a closing because somebody didn't own that property and they did not actually fill out properly the notarization jurat, and either the buyer wasn't who they said they were going to be or the seller wasn't who they said they were going to be. And this kind of adherence to Florida law may sound silly, may sound really so simple, but it happens at least once a day, every single day here in Broward County. Next slide. There we go. Other real estate and title issues. So this is as much as it is an issue for estate planning as it is for ultimately your homestead exemption. And I'll explain why. Every other day, we get an issue that pops up that mom bought a property and mom took title with her child, adult child. Why did they do it? For estate planning purposes. But the deed just says from Mila to Marty and Marty's daughter. It does not say how they take title to that property. When it is for estate planning purposes, the thought process is always joint tenants with rights of survivorship. But as you know, Florida statutes are very clear. If there is no ownership type specified on that deed, it's tenants in common. 50-50, or if there are multiple grantees, a percentage distribution. Why is this a problem? A, chances are that's not what the buyer wanted. So ask those questions. Second issue is, if this is a property you're hoping to get the homestead exemption on, if the mom, and I just use mom, it could be dad, it could be anybody, if that person only owns 50% of the property, they're only going to be eligible for the homestead from the homestead exemption on that portion. And even more importantly, only 50% of that property value is going to receive the benefit of the maximum 3% Save Our Homes benefit. So theoretically speaking, you could have a $500,000 property. It's titled as in just mom and daughter right? It doesn't say JTRS. So what? Mom is homesteaded on the property, daughter lives someplace else and is homesteaded someplace else. Mom is only going to be able to receive that 3% cap every year on the increase in property taxes on $250,000. That's it. And when do they find out? When it's too late. They find out when the seller is long gone, right? So if you're going to file a corrective deed, you need the seller. 99% of the time, nobody can find the seller. Good luck. Yet you have a mom, many times a senior, sometimes not, now not receiving the cap that they are truly, truly intending to receive. And that becomes a really big problem. So please, if you're a transactional attorney that handles real estate closing on either side, always ask your clients, yes, you want to take title with somebody else. Why? What are you intending to accomplish? Do you intend to own the property in proportionate sizes, 50-50, 33 and a third, depending on how many grantees there are? Or is your objective to own it as joint tenants with rights of survivorship for those estate planning purposes? And ultimately realizing that it has an impact on the homestead exemption, a really big impact on their homestead exemption. Many times when these folks realize, wow, I'm not getting the homestead exemption benefit I was hoping to do, all they can do is then just prepare a deed from them to the other co-owner as tenants in common, to them and the co-owner as joint tenants with rights of survivorship. So what does that do? That helps them moving forward. That doesn't get them back all that money they have spent and all that value that continued to grow instead of being capped at 3%, that grew at 10%. And that absolutely makes a difference. Another thing we wanted to discuss is eligibility requirements for the homestead exemption. Two things. Pretty clear cut. Sometimes they get a little more complicated. You have to own the property, that's A, and the property must be your permanent residence, right? Can't be permanently residing anyplace else, because you won't have, while you can own hundreds of pieces of property anywhere in the state, anywhere in the United States, and even abroad, only one is your permanent residence. Easy, clear, cut. Sometimes people don't realize that in order to receive this benefit, even if you are eligible, you have to file an application with the respective property appraiser in your county. I cite case law. Even if you would have been eligible years and years ago, you can't now file and expect to get it retroactively, because this entitlement requires an application. Why is this important? Again, to be able to speak to your clients, especially if you do transactional work, and share that important information with them. Because what happens is when you take title to a property, it's a change of ownership, and the property resets at current market value. Many times, especially like Marty mentioned, in today's economy, that's a huge difference. What the seller, who may have owned the property for 25 years, was paying property taxes on, was probably a fraction of what the new buyer will be paying property taxes on. And that change of ownership occurs the first year after the property sells. When else does a reassessment occur? When somebody files for the homestead exemption. And this we see down here in South Florida all the time. You have folks who own real estate down here in South Florida. They've owned it for years and years and years. They were snowbirds. It was a vacation home for them. They're getting on in years, or they're just sick of being someplace not in Florida. And while they've owned it for years and years and years, they are now filing for the homestead exemption for the first time. Well, one of the things that happens is the law requires that the property appraiser, the value is reset. Your assessed value, who, even though you weren't getting the homestead exemption, which gives you a 3% cap, the non-homestead exemption was 10%. non-homestead cap, there's no exemption. So the property can't increase each year by more than 10% of the assessed value. When you apply for the homestead exemption for the first year, the assessed value resets at current market value, which we all know today is much higher than it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago when the property owners bought that property originally. Now, our office has a very helpful approach and believes, and I say believes, and what we do all the time is when we see that scenario, we do give the property owner, now applicant for homestead exemption, the option to withdraw their homestead exemption application. There's actually proposed legislation up in the legislature to make that a legal requirement statewide. So while the law is the same, their interpretation on many things where there's no specific prescription in the law may be different by your specific property appraiser's office. Ours, we allow them to withdraw it because it really is a tremendous, tremendous increase. Well, another issue we see all the time, somebody owns a property in their individual name. It's most likely a rental property, sometimes a commercial rental property, and their accountant says, hey, you'd be able to write so much off of your income taxes if you transfer title into an LLC. Great advice from a liability perspective, from a income tax deduction perspective, but from a reset to market value perspective, that completely may change what you're taxed on, may not be great advice. So our suggestion is, before you make that recommendation to your client, pull up on your respective property appraiser's website the property. Take a look at what the assessed value is and take a look at what the market value is. Sometimes those numbers aren't far off from one another. So if you transfer title from an individual to an LLC, that reset at market value won't be so drastic. Other times, it can be 2 times, 3 times. We've seen even 4 times the new value, and the property taxes are a heck of a lot more than anyone anticipated. Many times I have constructive conversations with lawyers who say, well, it's the individual and it's an LLC that the individual wholly owns. And I take them back to their law school classes and saying, well, the reason you put a property instead of in your individual name into an LLC is to shield the individual, right? Right. The LLC then owns that asset, right? Right. Well, that's a change in ownership. That's what the law recognizes. And now there's case law just to clarify that point. Complete change in ownership requiring the property appraiser to reassess the property at whatever the current market value is. Can you fix it? Possibly. If it occurs in the same year, yes. So for the property appraiser's office throughout the state of Florida, in these type ownership, only one date matters. January 1st of each and every year. I can transfer my property, and please don't, because you're going to drive your property appraiser crazy, monthly, 12 times within the course of January 1 of 2025 to January 1 of 2026. And if by January 1, 2026, the same person or entity owns that property that owned it January 1 of 2025, no change. Right? We go January 1 is the only date that matters for this purpose for us. So in fact, if the change is made throughout the year, yep, transfer it back. What happens if the change is made on different? It's when do people realize, oh my God, what did I do? After they get, hopefully, their trim notice that they read. And if they don't, please, please, please read your trim notice. If not, which will be, a real problem, your tax bill. All of a sudden, you had a tax bill for $5,000 all these years. Now it's $15,000. Then people realize, something happened this year that caused my property taxes to jump so significantly. And that's when the issue pops up. That's when we get calls and emails from lawyers. We have found in Broward County, now I don't know if this would be successful elsewhere. I don't see why not. But we have recommended to folks, and it's worked, that the grantor and grantee, whether it's individual, usually individual to the LLC, that they sue one another. If in fact there's no issue with the defendant complaining about the lawsuit, if there's no issue with the defendant, clearly there wouldn't be in this particular structure, raising defenses. If in fact the plaintiff can show that they did this particular transfer, they were ill-advised, they were unaware, if they can put forth good reasons as to why, and again, there's no adverse effect to the defendant acquiesces to it, then a court order rescinding that transfer ab initio is what we in the Broward County Property Appraisers use to then do exactly that. Rescind that particular transfer, reinstate the prior Save Our Homes benefits, even the commercial Save Our Homes benefits to that property owner, the original individual. And then they can even get a refund in the overpayment of property taxes at that point. So we have seen it work very successfully in Broward County. And really, that's the only thing we can suggest to be able to fix that problem. I don't know how to switch. So one of the things Jeanette wanted us to touch upon is the recently enacted Amendment 5. As all of you saw on the ballots, recently enacted Amendment 5 helps kind of factor in the inflation issue of the homestead exemption, right? The last time the exemption was changed by constitutional amendment was in 2008. That's when the second $25,000 on everything except school board taxes was implemented. Things have changed a lot in all of these years, and $50,000 just doesn't go as far as it used to. Amendment 5 was enacted by the voters and is currently the law. And what it does is it allows the second $25,000 to increase by the consumer price index increase each and every year, and it compounds. So whatever the number is after this year, the next compounding will add on top of that number. So it does provide a little bit of extra property tax relief to homeowners. I'd like to tell you it provides a lot. It doesn't, but it's the first change of its sorts in many, many years. And
thank you so much, Mila.
That was our last slide.
Oh, yeah, there's one more on here. I'm going to skip over that because I see some questions. I think we're a bit out of time. Maybe we could just squeeze one in. Someone asked, and I think this is a good question. I've been asked this before as well. If the property is partially rented, does the homeowner lose the homestead exemption? And is the county doing partial reassessments?
Sure. Mila, do you want to take that, or do you want me to take that?
Whatever you prefer, Marty. You're the boss.
Sure. Well, tell me if I am wrong, but I'll do my best. So, under Florida law, I'll give you a quick idea of how you can lose your homestead exemption. Then I'll talk about if it's partially rented. So, under Florida law, if you rent out your full property for 30 days per year for 2 consecutive years, you automatically lose your homestead exemption. There's no discretion we have whatsoever. Same thing happens if you rent out your property for more than 6 months in a year, you lose your homestead exemption. If you don't violate either of those statutes, then it's more of a discretion of the property appraiser. So if we find out that you're renting out your property, we want to make sure, and you don't violate those laws, we want to make sure you didn't intend to relinquish your homestead. So basically, for example, let's say you're renting out your property, somebody lets us know, but you're renting out just for a couple months. You had to go to California for your job, something of that nature. What we would do in a situation like that, if we're not sure, we can temporarily remove the homestead exemption, and then we talk to the homeowner and find out just to make sure they didn't relinquish their homestead exemption. They still intend to make that their primary residence. Now, when somebody is renting out a portion of their property, under Florida law, we can adjust the homestead exemption to reflect that you're still entitled to the exemption, but we would make it to where a portion of the property that is, for example, being rented is not covered by the homestead exemption. So let's say, for example, somebody's renting out a room in your 5-bedroom home. We can adjust the homestead exemption to make sure you have it on almost all the property, but basically that room will not reflect having the homestead exemption. And what we do is we're very easy here. I know there are common areas. If somebody's renting a room, they're also using the couch and the bathrooms. We wouldn't really touch that. We would just try to adjust the homestead exemption to reflect the portion that is not being rented. Did I say that correctly, Mila?
Absolutely.
Great. Excellent.
Great. And so I just want to reiterate, we really appreciate you coming today. I've enjoyed working on this with you, and the tax section is really thankful for you attending. Thanks to all the members of the 4 sections that are here today. And Andrea Aguilar asked me to announce our next CLE, which is June 4th, Early Termination of Charitable Remainder Trust, presented by Jerry Hesh. So we hope to see you there as well.
Excellent. You did a great job, Jeanette. Thank you all very much for having us on. I really enjoyed it. And as I said before, if anybody needs anything, please call me anytime or email me. And emailing me is the best way, which is just martykiar@bcpa.net. That's MartyKiar @bcpa.net. I answer my emails all day, every day. Anything we could ever help on, be an assistance on, being a resource for, please let us know. We're happy to help. Thanks again, Jeanette. I really appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Bye.